David, do you feel like you have to generate everything?
No.
I feel like I have to go to sleep. My
Men
thing
in
is,
general just rub me the wrong way. But anyway, go ahead.
oh, okay. So why are you on this podcast?
I still like attention.
Good one.
So we just received our first question of someone while they were having intercourse.
I know. I was so distracted. I was like,
Yeah, that was really distracting.
whoa.
Yeah.
Ooh.
The big hormone Enneagram.
Let me lay it on the line. I got a little freakiness inside. Let you know that the man has got to deal with it.
Hi, I'm John Lukovich, sexual self-pres, 4-5 wing, 458 trifix.
Hi, I'm David Gray, self-pres sexual 9-1 974 trifix.
What up? It's Emeka. I'm an 8-wing 7, sexual self-pres with 854 fixes.
Hi, I'm Nancy. I am a self-pres social 3, wing 4, with a 369 trifix. If you like our podcast, guys, make sure you go like and subscribe on the Apple Podcast app. And if you really like us, you should definitely leave us a review.
Welcome to Big Hormone Enneagram. We are pausing our journey through David's Baba Chakra of instincts and going to take some questions and answers on my book, which you should buy. You could basically look up most e-retailers. Instinctual drives the Enneagram. And before we get into it, David has a trifix book guide, visual guide, and I wrote an intro for it, and it's like a very unique take on an exploration of the trifix combinations. It's mostly visual and with poetic and archetypal evocations of the trifix. It really gives you an energetic sense of the trifix in a way that no other Enneagram material approaches the Enneagram. I don't know if there's anything you want to say about it, David.
I think I'm blank again, probably.
Where do we buy it?
You can buy it on Enneagrammer.com, and you can buy it on Enneasite.com.
Cool.
On
And then
the product pages. Yeah.
And then Emeka and I are both going to be on the Enneagram Global Summit. It's coming up, so we're just announcing it now. In a future episode, we'll have links to sign up for it. And if you sign up through our links, we will make a little bit of pathetic money. So please do that. I'm going to be doing Instincts with Mario Sikora, and I'm doing a little bit on Type 5, and Emeka's doing Type 8.
Yeah, and Enneagrammer.com, we have Dark Arts Academy videos every week on typing celebrities. For those of you who've been wanting to learn how to type and to learn how to make distinctions and recognize them in real time, you can sign up $19 a month at Enneagrammer.com. All right.
Let's get into it.
So I was very intrigued by the sections of the book that talked about the loss of essential qualities as an important element in the formation of the type structure. I'm wondering, what might it look like to face a situation that exemplifies or symbolizes the loss of one's essential quality? So a scenario in which a type faces an inescapable or traumatizing situation that serves as a reminder or example of that specific loss of that corresponding essential quality. I'm wondering if any of you have experienced this and if there's potential for self-awareness and growth stemming from that sort of direct experience, whether it's in the moment or in hindsight or reflection, or if that sort of experience is just too overwhelming and traumatizing for the psyche to process it or use it in any meaningful way.
That's a very good question.
Starting off strong.
Yeah, hell yeah. One thing I would say, so for people listening, a lot of my book is about essence and the loss of essence and the tension or relationship between essence and personality. And if you're not familiar with other things we've done or not familiar with the book, I go in to describe what essence is from my point of view and how the loss of it impacts the type and how instinct is related to the loss of essence. And in short, these qualities of essence, these qualities of the texture and geography of our consciousness that show up as 9 distinct qualities organized around the Enneagram. When we become identified with our personality and identified with our instinctual drives, we lose touch with them and we suffer. And we suffer in the style of our type's passion. Those have the names of like sloth and lust and deceit and envy, these kind of things. They come from literally the tradition of the 7 deadly sins. Before there was 7, there was at least 8, maybe 9. Whole thing. But anyway, that's the quality of suffering. And something to note that's really important about the passions. Passion from the word pathos, which means suffering or disease, is that even when we feel good, like when we're feeling narcissistically good or good about our personalities, we are still actually suffering from the point of view of essence. We're still in the passion. So, um, like envy, oh, I want to be unique and I'm frustrated with everything and I want everything, I want to be special and everything's just degrading. And then sometimes I feel special or I feel whatever. And if it's like a win that builds up my personality, it's still envy, it's still suffering. So we always think of envy and lust and all these passions as negative emotional states. They're negative in the sense that they can feel good, but they are not. They're based on a severance or lack of connection to essence. So that being said, we are always every situation to one degree or another does represent the loss of our essential quality. But more to your question, I think that there are certain circumstances or dynamics that really like rip the wound open. And I've been speaking for a bit, so I don't know if anybody wants to share anything, but I've got some examples for myself.
Can you translate what she's asking, basically?
I think what she's asking is there a situation that exemplifies the loss of the essential quality for us, like in a very clear and specific way? I think that's what she's asking.
Yeah. Okay.
Does that sound right to
Yeah,
Nathan?
that
Yeah.
sounds right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And you're saying that all of existence is pretty much a loss of essential quality.
Yeah, that our just being in our personality and the way what we're aiming for through our personality is the reaction basically to loss of essence.
Okay.
Because like if we were in touch with essence, there wouldn't be much to do. I mean, there would be. We'd still do everything instinctual, but inside it, we wouldn't be. You could say we would be inhabiting impartial presence
Hmm.
within. And so, but I do think that there are specific wounds and specific circumstances that really bring our wound to the surface. And I think that's kind of what she's asking for.
Mhm. That's my understanding of it.
So is one thing to do to give a brief description again of a couple of us or all of us, our passion, and maybe that recalls something for each of us or something? Or
That could work.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
I mean, I mean, it's kind of like how do I balance being very personal while also speaking on a podcast? But uh, I mean, I'm a sexual 4 and I'm looking to find essential depth, a sense of something that is like, mysterious and unique and beneath everything. And, like when we're really present, we can contact the depth, a sense of things being saturated and meaningful and coming from like saturated by an unknown source that is ever present. And I think that's the core of type 4. But through my personality, I feel like I'm going to get that sense of depth and specialness by pushing things away, by separating from things. And so when I do that through the sexual instinct, I'm looking for a sexual connection and an attraction and a fusion, sexual fusion that is separate from everything else, that is more special than everything else. And I want to be the only fucking one ever. And I want to find my only one. And so, like, I've talked on this pod before about my lifelong soulmate bullshit and
Mhm.
way that's played out in my life and the kind of like way as a hexhead boy that I've through that lens is like been blind to certain things and I don't know, experienced a lot of loss around it and realizing how much I was structuring my life to be this thing in a way that was like pushed away from everything else. And so I don't want to get too specific, but it's I mean it's like it's an ongoing struggle for me. like it's like I have it and there's all these fears that I don't have it, and all that creates all this pattern of reactivity. And
So, like with sloth, can you define sloth?
yeah, so sloth is the passion of the nine, and it's not like I'm lazy. It can be, but it mostly, like, what sloth really is a sense that my presence, my active participation and will in my own life is not that important. My preferences, my who and what I am, to show up fully as what I am is not that important or necessary or needed. So, in order to attach and adapt, I kind of delete parts of myself. I think of sloth as inner fragmentation. So, like, nines can be really active people. They can be really busy people, but there's a certain way that, like, I'm not all here because I don't feel like I can be. So much of what people attribute to four is nine is this sense of like I don't feel my own significance, my importance, my identity.
Well, that's my life story. So,
Right.
yeah, kind of not being able to grasp onto how people are holding me as important in their own minds or beings, and kind of not believing in it. And yeah, I don't know that I've got like a specific several events or circumstances that you know necessarily highlight it. I think it also combines with the social blind piece too,
Mhm.
where there's that kind of deleting yourself as having basic human needs in a certain way around connection and relationship and so forth. And so I'm kind of, yeah, just deleting myself a lot, and not understanding my impact and not seeing it. And yeah, and if I get a sense of it, I can't, it's like sand going through my fingers. I can't hold on to it.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, that I mean the self deletion thing. I was nines don't even see how much they're self deleting, and sort of it's not about me, or it's not like part of what I think of sloth is like settling.
Yeah,
And with a nine personality, I mean, every type is this, but nine most exemplifies like I'm going to sort of individuate or develop myself just enough so that I'm like efficient in quotes, efficient to getting my basic instinctual needs met.
right.
So like with a sexual nine, it's like I become just a sexual object. Like it's not even a high quality sexual connection. I'll just settle for like being a juicy piece of meat.
Hmm.
Or but with self pres nine, there's like I'm just gonna like focus on like my little world or my little lifestyle or my little whatever, and it's like it's good enough. Like I can't really ask for more, and don't even know if I want more.
And on the flip side of that, the essential quality for eight is power and seeking kind of intense sense of aliveness in for me as a sexual eight in the sexual in attraction chemistry. And so I've talked quite a bit on this pod about all my dating struggles, and the kind of culmination of a lot of that was the soul intercourse series that we had, where I realized certain things about the way I was approaching romantic relationships. And basically I had to learn to trust chemistry developing on its own outside of my own influence or ability to steer things, because as an
Mm,
eight it's sort of like I gotta, you gotta make things happen. And so sort of making the chemistry happen. And so I had to step back and learn to that there was already power or aliveness in the chemistry that I was experiencing, that I didn't have to try to generate it. And so it's, I mean, of course, it's a constant struggle. A personality is always going to want to kick in. It's like, I gotta, this is not enough. Like, that's the kind of
mhm.
internal message that I always have. This isn't enough, that there's another level to get to. And I think I had to, just looking at myself this year, or realizing or really seeing myself, seeing how much impact I already have on everything around me. Like, that's part of the eight thing, is
Mm,
not really seeing how large of a blast radius that you have,
mhm.
you know? And And so yeah, I think it's an ever growing process of sort of relaxing that personality mechanism of I gotta push, that there's more, and recognizing that things are there is already aliveness in this moment, and I don't. I mean, I told myself this a long time ago that I never have to. Once I realized like what eightness meant is that I never have to consciously try to escalate. Like it's gonna happen. I don't. I should never consciously try to like make that happen because I'm already unconsciously doing so much of it.
Yeah, Nancy,
Mm.
ready to
What?
bleed?
No. What? No. I have no blood. It's ice. What is mine? I've
What's your what?
forgotten. My
Central-
passion.
See,
or
Deceit, or no?
Yeah.
I mean, vanity. Vanity is
See
the better.
that? Okay. Yeah.
or you
yeah.
want the essential quality. You're looking for that,
Essential
right?
quality is value, and so like the passion, which is like when you're present, there's an inherent sense that I'm valuable and everything's valuable. Like you just there's a conditionless sense of value that's just there. It's a quality of our existence and our presence and our awareness that value is. And in Kabbalah, it's what is it, chesed? It's like glory. I don't know if I'm attributing the right
Mhm.
Hebrew name, but it's like sense of just like the glory of God. It's just like, whoa, it's just here. And so the three loses touch with value because they think that value is conditional on fulfilling certain instinctual goals like my work or being hot or being popular or whatever it might be. And I start to chase it through my dominant instinct.
So we're supposed to talk about times where we haven't felt that.
Or I don't know, yeah, or even like I think we're kind of going into like how that our ego thinks we will restore that essential experience too.
I mean, I'm always it's a little hard to like pinpoint for me because or I guess probably for everybody because it's like, everything I do revolves around creating myself into a valuable human.
Hmm.
I mean, I have to create value from everything I do.
Like and like how
I guess I have to find some way that it is valuable. Either I find like a niche group of people that find it valuable or like I believe there's something big that can come out of it or I think it's a good conversation starter when I'm talking to people. I can kind of drop little, oh well, I do this, um kind of tidbits. With everything going on with school recently, it's been like really pushing up against that because it's like I'm not getting easy yeses into the schools that I want to go into. I'm not getting no's, but I'm not getting easy yeses. And so it's really pushing up against like, oh, see, no one thinks you're valuable enough to go there kind of thing. So it's like it it controls my life. I hate it.
what's it? Can you imagine the quality of being valuable without doing that?
Nope.
Just you have okay.
Nope.
I guess
Yeah.
that's
I don't
the thing,
yeah, I
isn't it?
don't
that's it.
yeah, I don't know of a way to I mean there is no value in just not
Yeah,
how would
you can't just be.
no, you as a although I view other humans, that's the funny part. I view other humans as innately valuable,
Mhm.
but I don't view myself as innately valuable.
Well,
Yeah.
no one has any value.
Yeah, I mean, as an assertive type, I can relate to that thing where it's like if you're not making things happen, then nothing's happening.
Mhm.
So I mean,
So
it
what's the
is
fucking point?
right. If you're not creating it, if you're not generating it, if you're not steering it, then there's this fear is that if you're not doing, then nothing's happening. And so to allow things to be is a really challenging thing to recognize. It's kind of like I think for me, I just had to recognize that the quality that I was unconsciously looking for already existed before me, before anything I could do.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
I mean, of course, this is really difficult to do, but just to actually trust that the thing that I feel responsible to generate is already there.
Right.
Mhm.
Which-
Yeah, that doesn't even compute to me. I'm like, I don't know. Yeah.
David, do you feel like you have to generate everything?
No.
I feel like I have to go to sleep.
It's got to
I
generate
feel that
sleep.
too. But see, my sleep allows me to create value the next day.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, my sleep is just about sleeping. I can just be with the sleep.
I know.
Yeah,
My
David's
9 does
sleep
the same
allows
thing.
him to sleep even more.
Yes.
Watching a 9 sleep is like I consistently think Brian's dead.
Yeah,
I will poke him
there's
all the time.
there are pictures of me. It's like it's funny because there's actually an energy around my sleep. I mean, and around my eating. There's like it's like
Spiritual
And-
quality.
there's a spiritual quality, and like people take note of it, and they take pictures of me. They take pictures
Totally.
of me in my sleep. Yeah, because it's
I
like,
definitely have.
wow, that
Yeah.
person is
They
really
are
there.
asleep.
They're like way in there. Yeah. Like,
It's immediate REM cycle too. They're just down
Oh, yeah.
into it.
it's gone.
It's really impressive. I envy you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, I
That's
remember
my
in New
value.
Orleans, you fucking snoring was just like incredible.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you.
He means you're welcome. You're all welcome. All right, we got to move to the next one. This is the giant question. I'm gonna play the first minute, and then I'm gonna skip to about minute 12, where she actually has a question or like a critique that John can respond to, and then she has some juicy comments about John's attractiveness.
Okay, hello. Let's start with the good parts. The good parts. It was mostly a very good book. I don't know if you're aware. All the Enneagram Tumblr ate it up pretty much. What I liked is that the explanation is really fine, granular, built up from the ground up, with the mechanism behind it, and drawing from a lot of different sources. It wasn't just the vague association stuff. So you can, if you follow along with the reasoning, you can, a lot of it you can prove to yourself why it's true. You're not just doing this repeating definitions. That is often what happens. One could tell that you had mostly compiled this data for your own use, for your like self-development type of thing, but it was formulated and structured in such a way that more or less everybody who could get a use of it can get the parts that they need.
Okay, let me skip.
Her accent is adorable.
Yeah, she sounds like she's an assassin.
I love it.
So the one remaining nitpick that still stands that I have is that you have the word individuation doing a lot of work. Like, I think that could have used from like a crisp definition. What exactly you mean by it? Okay, not all terms are precise. Some work by the nature more associatively. But I still think that it would have been helpful to have at some point in the book a definition or trying to hash out what individuation even means. Further thought. Thought number 1 is that John on the cover picture, assume it's also his painting. The paintings are really cool, and John looks kind of hot in that picture. I don't know. It's not even the face is nice too, but like the expression in the eyes, it's so intense. Like, next point.
Yeah, we'll just end it there.
She goes,
She thought about that quite a bit.
Yeah, she did.
The expression in the eyes, it's so intense.
Sexual 4, baby.
Oh man.
Yeah, actually, I think that critique is very fair and very good. And I do define individuation on page 93. Say individuation is the maturation of consciousness, but that in itself probably needs more unpacking. I say individuation is the maturation of consciousness. It is the cultivation of essence from an unorganized but sensitive quality awareness into the concentration of a real individuality through the practice of self-remembering. So that's how I define individuation in the book. It's a development of essence such that the sense of our identity shifts from the patterns of the personality into essence, into an ongoing and collected sense of presence, presence in all three centers, but it's beyond the three centers. And like the individuated, or what I call conscious essence in the book, instead of essence is undifferentiated and unorganized, sort of something you get glimpses of through something textured and dynamic and collected and ever present. And that's not even to get kind of more fourth way-ish. That's not even actual conscious essence yet. That's a whole other thing. But to be conscious of essence is individuation. And as essence as the center of identity and essence as separate from the machinations or patterns of the personality. I don't know if did you guys read chapter, I think it's chapter 4? What were y'all's impressions?
I've not gotten that far yet.
God
Is that-
damn it, Nancy.
The book is, I mean, I've heard multiple people say this. The book is really dense in the sense that to really take it in, I don't think it's something that you can really read all the way through without stopping and really like reconsidering your whole entire life, you know?
Yeah. I read part of it, started reading it on a plane, and I definitely freaked people out because people were looking at me like, what the fuck is she reading?
What do you mean?
The cover,
Just the
man.
cover
Oh,
on a plane.
what's wrong with the cover?
It's spook.
It's totally normal. It's a very, you know, Starbucks coffee fall
Yeah.
basic
Cafe
bitch type
latte.
of cover.
Woman with a shaved head and all black reading on a red-eye flight to Nashville. Yes. It's very normal.
So
You look like a jihadist.
Yeah, I
Really?
did. Yeah, definitely.
that's great.
Joel, yeah.
Good. I just wanted my picture and the cover or my painting on it. And yeah, my friend was helping me. She graphic designed the cover. She was like, I'm gonna make your picture bigger. Right.
It's I really love that artwork on the front personally.
Thank you. Yeah, it's called Gestures Resonant with Eternity.
Of course
Yeah,
it
I mean,
is.
so I haven't finished the book because it's. I mean, I've been watching or reading parts of the book over the last few years, just helping edit it and stuff like that. But like reading it from front to cover or from beginning to end, it's going to take a while, at least for me, just because that's just I don't read books that way, and there's a lot of parts to chew on. I don't even think I've read any Enneagram book all the way through because I generally read because I'm looking to learn something specific or I'm working through something. So I'll
Right.
read a couple chapters and that'll take me, you know, a month or so to work it out and then come back to get the rest. So it's
Yeah,
I
I've
typically listen to books, so this is very different for me.
I've been jumping around. I don't know how to read a book straight through. I don't have that as a function. So
Yeah.
You were
So,
neglected as a child, don't know how to
I
read.
was
Yeah.
neglected. Yeah. And no, but also I've had the one of the old versions from about a year ago, you know,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
I've skipped around on it for about the last year. So, but yeah, it's I do intend to go through it straight
So
through.
what we're saying, John, is we're
Wow.
never going to finish your book.
Wow. None
Well-
of my fucking podcast friends have read my book. No, I know, I get it. And like it is like I do feel like, and I did this somewhat intentionally, but I didn't want it to just be a skip around book because like I feel like because the thesis is not here's your type. The thesis is like, here's like what inner work means relative to all this information, and
And it's building towards something.
right. Yeah, it's all building. So there's definite climax, so to speak.
Right.
And the other thing, just because we forgot to mention at the beginning, if you are reading or if you're reading John's book, and even if you haven't finished, go to Amazon or wherever you bought the book and leave a review.
Yes.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Leave
Yeah,
an awesome review.
I think it's got like 39 at the moment. We should be able to get that to 100. We can definitely do that over the next 6 months.
For anybody listening that's like, oh, I'll write a review. Like most people don't finish books and don't get around to it. Like people are like, oh, I'll do it when I finish the book, but like, you know, like 5% of people finish books.
Yeah, just do it today. Do it today.
And a small thing goes a long way for me, because I'm not a famous author. Like nobody knows who the fuck I am. So like people are looking at different books and they see my cover and they're like, all right, there's a few reviews or whatever, but they're all really good. I would appreciate, I mean, even if they're shit, write that too. I'm interested in that. But so far they're pretty good.
Yeah. You don't even have to write a review. You can just leave a rating.
Yeah, right.
And yeah, that helps.
That helps a lot.
Okay, next question.
Hey, I have a question about instinct stacking and how it's determined. There's some portions in John's book where he relates certain stages of infant instincts. I'm wondering if in your research, John, if you found anything about why one instinct becomes dominant over the other two. Thanks so much. Bye.
Yeah, I don't know if that was just on my connection or there was a part for everybody where it was sort of like
I heard that.
And the recording there was a part that cut out, but the general gist of the message is still there.
Yeah, okay. So I talk a little bit about it in chapter 4 also, where I talk about how basically, you know, we are in my airy fairy view, we are born as essence, and like that a baby is not a blank slate, that there's qualities, and I do think that we're born as our type, or at least born as the essential quality that will develop into the type when it becomes structured. And so I talk about in the book Margaret Mahler's separation individuation, which are distinct stages of psychological birth that comes after physical birth, in which the psychic structure of an infant starts to organize and develop, and in response to what and why, and how it coincides with these stages, as well as Freudian psychosexual stages in terms of different places or locations of libidinal energy and self-regulation, and how those coincide with the psychological structures that develop. So before I blast, does anybody
I mean, the question is about like, how do instinct stackings develop, or how do they come about to be that people have certain instinct stackings, right?
Yeah, so the short answer is I don't fucking know. You know, like I wish I did, and I wish we could do studies and all this kind of stuff, but I don't even know how something like a study could measure something like this.
In your view, John, could it be inborn?
I tend not to think so. I think it does have to do with it could either be something traumatic or something not necessarily traumatic, but something that just makes a deep impression. And what I mean is, like, you know, part of what I talk about in the book is that early in life, infancy and onward, there is a way that our attention is directed through our own bodies and through our parents directing us to self-regulate, to feed ourselves, and to walk and move and explore, and then gradually to experience ourselves as social beings, as like mom, like it's called object constancy, like that mom is not an extension of me, but is her own person, and how I have to relate to her as her own person. So I suspect that through these stages and through what was mirrored to us, that somehow certain phases where these instincts were coming into development and coalescing, we were either given there's either something traumatic or something like kind of reinforced or rewarded, maybe positively reinforced or negatively reinforced. I'm not really sure.
Would it need to? I mean, need to is a subjective concept, but would it essentially need to come together by roughly a certain age? Like by 2 years old or something like that.
Yeah, I think so. There's a stage called object constancy that I spoke to, and part of the separation individuation phases, there's something called optimal distance, which it's not really its own phase. It's sort of the optimal distance is the kind of one of the things that coincides with with individuation. This different terminology for individuation than we were
Right.
previously speaking to.
Mhm.
This is the individuation of the personality from a merged phase with mom and dad. Optimal distance is like when the kid starts like the realization that the kid is separate from his or her parents and needs to find the appropriate way to relate to the parents. It's not going to overwhelm them and put off the parents, but it's also not going to overwhelm and override the kid's energy and brand new psychological boundaries. And I talk about this as really like the formation or the place where the social instinct really gets shaped in people. And I don't just mean dominant. Like I think
Mhm.
this phase would be especially a pertinent thing that a social type, for example, may be working out their whole lives. But I think like even as us, all of us except Nancy, as social blinds, like this is also where our flavor of social instinct gets constellated. And so to give an example, I don't know if this is true. This is just my hunch. Like, my mom is moody too, and my dad is a cartoonist and a 5 and 6 wing and funny and whatever. And so in my family, humor and laughter is like we don't we're very like even though there's only two like there's six of us but there's only two social blinds like there's not a lot of social instinct in our family. And so like our primary means of communication has always been jokes. And so I think for a moody I hate everybody for I make a lot of jokes and resort to humor because that was sort of the model of of social connection in my family,
Mhm.
and that might be
Mm.
how I create optimal distance with like both my parental figures, but my parental figures is standing in for my relationship with the rest of the world, like the object
Right.
relation thing. So
Mm.
that's my sense. I think separation of I mean I can go through it if y'all want, but it's a whole thing.
But also to the question of like age when it probably solidifies
Probably
the
2.5,
stacking.
3.
Yeah.
Hmm, interesting.
I mean, we could definitely be born with it, but the thing is that essence is something spiritual. It's something not having to do with our bodies, and it does have something to do with our bodies, but it's like prior to bodies and independent of body, or can be independent of body. Whereas instinct is pure body.
Hmm.
Mm.
So we develop instincts in order to navigate a body and to learn how to regulate a body. Like the reason that kids are so fucking miserable is because to be around because they're learning to regulate their instincts because they're new to a body.
Mm.
Whereas their love or their joy or their sorrow is so pure because those have a kind of they reflect essence. That there's something intrinsic about their beingness that's just coming through in a pure way that most adults do not have access to anymore.
You know, it makes me wonder if maybe since there's so many self-pressed socials out in the world, it would make sense if there's part of the process of like being born through age 2 because everybody kind of does the same thing and handles kids the same way.
Hmm. Hmm.
If that is why if that's creating like a lot of self-pressed socials, if there's something in there, a process in there that's creating that instinct.
Right. That's exactly like my thinking in terms of, my suspicion and observation that I've shared here before is that like very cold climates, northern climates tend to have more self-pressed social, more sexual blindness. And, in a colder climate, your need to kind of like self-regulate in a kind of a tidy, autonomous way needs to happen faster because the pressures of the environment and the pressures of like if you live in a northern climate, you have to live in a box. You have to live in some container of heat. So you have to learn how to like be contained. Whereas you go to like cultures closer to the equator, there's more obvious sexual instinct, even if it's not necessarily sexual dominant. Like Alexandra is sexual blind, but she's Puerto Rican, and so I think that there's something there in terms of her accessibility to the sexual instincts that is there. But going to all kinds of equatorial cultures, whether it's Puerto Rico or even in Egypt, which I would say is a sexual blind culture, there's a sexual energy there.
Mhm.
On and on. So I think that there's more reinforcement of certain, like, oh, the kid's learning to feed his or herself, like, oh, good job, little Nancy, or good job, little John. It's like, yeah, like that gets reinforced, like autonomy, good.
Mhm.
Whereas like in a more equatorial climate, who knows what, like part of what I go into in my book is what I call instinctual resources, which are literal resources or abstract things like attraction or esteem, like social or sexual things. And so, like, if a kid in another culture is maybe like expressing, there's a phase called rapprochement that I think has to do with the sexual drive. And if there's a way that that is either rewarded or traumatized more, that may lead to a sexual type, and working that thing out as an adult or replaying that as an adult. And so, like, maybe like part of that phase of rapprochement is that the kid is trying to reestablish merging with mom or dad after they've separated. So trying to throw off psychological boundaries, and their libidinal focus goes back to mom or dad after having been out in the world and trying to find their own autonomy. And so maybe at that time, sexual types, that was somehow reinforced in a positive way of like, oh, look, like, oh, look at how juicy he thinks mom is right now. Something like that. I have no
or
idea.
or just like excessive displays of, I don't know, just like in certain cultures, at least in Nigerian culture. I grew up in Nigeria, spent first 11 years of my life there, and I distinctly remember as a very young child at they have these ceremonial dances where called masquerades, where people put on this monstrous kind of costume, and they have these really colorful dances, and it's something that just etches itself in your psyche if you see it at a very young age. And so in really warm climates, I think it's really encouraged that people get out and really physically express themselves to music. Like dancing around a circle
Mhm.
is a big thing in a lot of cultures where it's warm enough to do that. And so from a very young age, I just, just being wild in terms of expressing yourself is something that's more encouraged. And so I would imagine that in cultures that have that, like you look at Brazil, that they have carnival and
Mm.
shit like that, where it's just sexual instinct. Even if people are primarily sexual blind, there's an overtone of this excessive, pointless display that is just colorful.
Yeah. Right. Right. So yeah, that's why, like, there's all this fucking racism mixed in and stuff. But like a lot of shit you see, like, I was fascinated by fascists and neo Nazis and stuff like that for a while, and their bullshit about how like advanced Northern Europe is and how like primitive the rest, like the equatorial climates are, and it's like it's just completely up to, first of all, bullshit, but second of all, it's up to like environmental pressures. There's nothing special. It's just like like it's the materialist Marxist reading of things. It's just like certain material factors create and lead to certain material conditions, and so that people work with and respond to, and then express through culture. So I think that, yeah, like that I think it's harder to find sexual type energy in northern climates, and I think that's because it's doesn't make as much sense and would probably not be as encouraged or reinforced in those climates.
Mhm.
Hi there. This is Misha. I use they, them, or he, him pronouns. And my question is around sexual instinct and like more around the loss of self, dissolving boundaries, maybe even like reconstellating of the self, which is archetypally found in sex. And I really have appreciated y'all putting like sex back into the sexual instincts and really distinguishing it from social. And I guess my question is more about distinguishing it from spiritual transcending of boundaries. I've worked with a lot of psychedelics, and I'm wondering if I'm getting those sexual needs met through transcending like the ego boundaries also, like in addition to sex and kink and all these other areas of crossing boundaries, but also like, yeah, with spiritual ego dissolvey states, and like we pursue essence through our instincts, mistakenly pursue essence through our instincts, and so that line feels a little blurry with the dissolving of the ego. Thanks, y'all.
So the question is, what's the difference between the sexual one of the like so in my book I talk about instinctual needs being what the instincts or motivational drives to fulfill, and for the sexual instinct it's sex, um, chemistry, and loss of self. And so Misha is asking, what's the difference between loss of self from a sexual instinct point of view and spiritual overcoming of boundaries, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's a very good question. They're easily confused, especially if people often look to their sexual instinct to do that, and to be a spiritual doorway, and often mistakenly. Any instinct can be kind of like leveraged into you could say like a spiritual experience or awakening. But kind of think of it as a lateral versus vertical loss of self. So like part of the function of the loss of self and loss of boundaries for the sexual drive is to kind of be renewed, is to kind of be reconstituted and reconfigured so that you remain interesting, but also your whole orgasm physiologically like regulates your nervous system and kind of changes your energy around. But spirituality requires the development of being. Spirituality is not just the deconstruction of the ego and expecting something to be there. One of the kind of you know negative impressions left by something like mainstream Christianity is that your soul is just waiting for you to uncover. And there is the potential for a soul, so to speak, but you got to build something. And so there's being, and the paradox of being and emptiness are kind of like two sides of the same coin of essence. So I think that a loss of self is a really necessary part that the sexual instinct can facilitate, is like a really important instinctual groundwork that can be used at higher and higher levels, because like one of the things I see, for example, in the Gurdjieff work, which I would say there's not a lot of sexual energy in the Gurdjieff work, or in terms of people who belong to Gurdjieff groups, is that there can be this like very rigid, like sacred but kind of stodgy quality, and so you can feel like a sort of lack of energy being pumped. And so the ability to kind of play with boundaries and to not get too stagnant is really important part of what the sexual drive can bring to an inner practice. But some people often, especially when you get into things like white people teaching tantra, mistake sexual instinct for spirituality, or as and but done the right way, it can be an actual door. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, that's an example of compartmentalized sexual.
Yes.
It's not. It's an event versus something that you can integrate in a moment to moment experience. So anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so on the EU website, there's a quote somewhere that says, so like this, the instinct stack, sexual self-pres uses fitness for the purpose of being a sexual object. So I'm curious about, how do folks who are sexual self-pres but who are bad at self-pres do this? Like when I think of self-pres and fitness, I think of like literal maintenance of the body, health level, what the body looks like. I don't know, I think John talks about like working out and shit like that. And that being important for attraction. But I'm curious about like people who are sexual self-pres but who are garbage at self-pres stuff and not particularly like fit or good at maintaining the body. How do they still use the body for attraction strategies? Like if the literal physical body is garbage, does fashion, for example, get used instead? oh yeah, so like does fashion get used like in lieu of fitness, and like is that still self-pres, or does like something that a person like literally does, like creating something, is that still like a self-pres kind of attraction strategy? I think I'm just sort of interested and curious about what specifically gets categorized as self-pres in service of the sexual, and in attraction displays.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a good question, but like self-pres is much more than just fitness. So like, I think sensuality, using sensuality and sexuality is like like the body, buttering fruits, whatever it might be. Like actually like worshiping the body,
Hmm.
getting interested in somebody's smell, their taste, that kind of stuff. Like like how their skin tastes. And also like yeah, like building something or like art or like some kind of like display. Like I mean, I would even argue that my book has a sexual self-pres attraction hook piece that was like
Right.
just like I couldn't really make a choice to do something otherwise. But it's like, oh, I've done something. I've made an object that is a representation of my effort as an attraction piece. I'm not really like leaving that up to like my charisma and my personality like a sexual social might. I'm like, here's a thing I did that represents something.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think like we said last week, like sexual self-pred is really embodying the sexual display, embodying magnetism in skills and crafts, things that you've created. Like here's a thing that's supposed to be magnetic, whereas with social as a tool, it's more like my personality and my self genre is something that can hook people.
Hmm.
And like an exaggerated version would be, say, sculpture. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? Like because it's so self-presy and it's clay and it's objects and it's things and making something beautiful that's an attraction display, that's a thing
Hmm.
as opposed to the personality.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have three more questions. They're just general pod questions, but they just need to be. I
Hmm.
think they're good ones that need to be addressed. So they're not about John's book, but
Hey, this isn't an Enneagram question, but could you guys put together a Spotify playlist of all of the songs at the end of your episodes? Because I would definitely listen to the fuck out of that. And excellent taste in music. So, just a request, not something I want on the pod, but thank you. Bye.
thank you very much. It already exists.
And it's
Uh,
awesome.
How do people find it?
So yeah, if you want to find it, just Google Big Hormone Music Spotify. It's or you can just search on Spotify for Big Hormone Music. It's my account. I have a playlist with every song that I've used on the show. But yeah, thanks for that question. Lots of people keep asking that, so it's good to just put this on the show so people can know where to find it if they want it.
That's
All
Emeka's
right.
tasteful 4 with a 3
Yeah.
fix.
Absolutely.
Okay, this is a question about typing.
Hello. I'm a new listener, and I've been listening to your guys' podcast. You got Emeka and David said that when you're typing someone, kind of the best way that you found to type them is to read their body energy. And I'm a 9-wing 1 and with a 974 trifix. And I definitely pick up on people's energy, but I am not as comfortable typing people as you guys are. And I was just wondering if you guys could run through each type and kind of the energy that you get off of them that helps you type them. Thanks. Bye.
So that would be a whole episode, and the short answer to that is Dark Arts Academy. We if you have any questions about how we're typing people, you can listen to the episode that we myself, Joseph, and David recorded on I think you want to learn about typing or whatever the fuck I called it. You can, yeah, if you're curious, just sign up for Dark Arts Academy. We do this every week, and we do, people that are of all the types, and you can sort of watch how we're doing it, and you can try to find your own way of recognizing the types. But I mean, John's a hard type, and Nancy's a hard type, and I think everyone has to find their own sort of internal map to recognize the types. But David and I are doing it from the body center.
It would be a good possible podcast unto itself.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, because when I'm dealing with typing people, I feel like I have to find what energy and where I feel it for each type. So I'd be interested to hear what you guys experience with different, because I bet it's different for everybody.
Joseph learned when we all hooked up and started working together, he wanted to learn how to type and just picking up things from us. And he's got his own map. He's a social 4, and there's a way that he can really tap into what people are presenting, like their identity they're putting out there, that David and I are not paying attention to at all. And
Right.
it's like everyone has their own internal bias that they're operating from in terms of typing. Like you're going to notice certain things depending on what type you are. And yeah, I mean it's a whole thing. I think we our dark arts videos have been really helpful
So
to a lot of people who want to figure that kind of stuff out.
here's another thing, and this is something to pitch. Is I started doing these voiceover videos where I'm taking people's typing videos that they turn into Enneagram or Universe on our Facebook group, and doing kind of a play-by-play where I play the video, person says a few things, and then I stop it and I say what I'm seeing. And some of that is along those same lines of, kind of energetic, picking up energetic signature and qualities like that are kind of nuanced, and of course using my own body center style of picking up things, and so you get to hear that narrative. And that's a new service that we have on enneagrammer.com, where it's like a follow-up service where you can have me narrate. Joseph might do the same thing here coming up soon as well.
So yeah, there you go. You get typed and you can hear David and his mouth noises.
Yes, which is very important.
All right, so we have one last one, but it's kind of a big question.
Question for the big hormone Enneagram. So I come up from a very relational lens in terms of looking at the relationship between people, how people interact. And I'm really curious about like what aspects of personality create and contribute to like easeful relations versus like, some relationships, the people you talk to, it's just like hard, like constantly misunderstanding each other. Other people, it's like you're already on the same page and you don't even know how that happened. And so I'm curious, without oversimplifying, of course, because I know there's a lot of diversity within each type. Specific types can show up in many different ways, given, instincts, trifixes, person, like the person's history and all of that. But with all that said, what can you say about how different types interact with and see each other? And I have to say, I think one of the reasons I love this specific podcast so much is that I get to see in every episode the ways that you all interact with each other. And because you all seem to have already a certain sort of fondness for each other, there's like a realness with that. There's like a realness founded in love around the way you all see each other, see things similarly, differently, like the really nitty gritty of like how you interact in all these tiny ways, how you navigate your own conversations together. And so I'm really curious about y'all's take on this. All right, thanks.
So we just received our first question of someone while they were having intercourse.
I know. I was so distracted. I was like,
Yeah, that was
God,
really distracting.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Ooh.
I need to sign off and go be alone.
Be alone.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, just
That is a
how
good question.
how do people relate, and what factors influence how well people get along based on Enneagram stuff? What do you think, Nancy?
Me? Okay. Well, I think just like typologically speaking, it's kind of easy to like pick out who's going to rub each other the wrong way, right? And who's going to get along. I think that is kind of oversimplifying it, but like, I feel like each type kind of has their favorite type, probably.
Yeah.
Like I love me some female 8s. Female 8s are like my best friends. And then give me a good 9 and I'm just like,
One thing that I've noticed is that all the closest people in my life had either have a family member or some close connection to an eight. And so there's some kind of frame of reference for that energy. And so what I'm realizing is that I think we do have favorite types, and it's individual, but it's also kind of like maybe you grew up with a certain type
Mm-hmm.
and you get used to that. And I didn't grow up with any sixes, but I've had a lot of sixes in my life. My partner is a six, and so there's an inherent chemistry that I have with sixes, or just But then again, the reactive types all have an innate chemistry, so you can look at it that way. Um, but yeah, I think you can find a bridge into all the types. Nancy's a three, and she's an assertive type, and I can relate to her from the perspective of an assertive type. I can relate to David as a body type, and I can relate to John as having the same instinct stacking, trifix, and reactive. So I think there's just, if you really wanted to, and if you had some sort of affinity with someone, you can find a bridge
Mm-hmm.
into just about any type.
But she is right. Like sometimes when I interact with people for the first time, like it's just awkward. Like it just doesn't vibe. And my experience with that is it's other threes.
Hmm.
When I meet people and I'm just like, it's like this halting, like just the conversation doesn't work. Like I've experienced that mostly with threes.
I think have friends of every type. I think what I've noticed is that I have a lot of social self preses and sexual self preses in my life. And I think one of the things I've been like, sometimes I have reactions to social sexuals because I'll feel like they're not serious enough about the things I'm serious about. And I don't know if a social sexual, and it's not also, I have plenty of social sexual friends, but I've noticed like there's an instinctual reaction or repulsion to like, and we talked about this, I think, the last podcast
Right.
episode. But yeah, it's like I'm like very serious about certain things, and sometimes I'll feel like there's a frivolity about it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I also like humor and wildness. So like, what I've noticed is I just don't like types. I don't even know if it's a type thing. I just like people that can't hang. Like I like when people are like when I'm making friends with somebody and they can take my sarcastic, dry, negative humor and not try to change it or like change the dynamic or like I don't feel like they're manipulating it to like lift it somehow. Like that is cool.
Mm-hmm.
But I always can feel when somebody is like like with we talked about with like attachment types that need to get on the same page. When I'm not singling out attachment types. Like if attachment type
Okay.
lets me stay on their own page, like it lets me stay on my page, and I'm like fuck yeah. But if this attachment type is like, oh, you need to come over here, I'm like I'm never going over there. So
Yeah, I think we can probably all four of us relate to the people being too positive irks us.
yeah.
Hmm.
Don't make me. I want some spicy sad up in here.
Yeah, spicy sad humor also. I don't want too too serious in a certain way. Like I want to be able to laugh at like and make fun
Mm-hmm.
of sacred things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
This was a question that got me into typology to begin with, because I was watching my parents fight all the time, and I started thinking of, why the hell are they married, and how can I figure something out so that I don't end up with a partner that I fight with all the time. And so just this question of, why is it that you meet certain people and you're just immediately hit it off, and it's certain people you meet and there's just a block, and you that doesn't happen? Like, what's going on? I think Enneagram is part of it, but even if you have a favorite Enneagram type, you're gonna meet people of that same Enneagram type who you just can't get along with.
Totally.
And so I think it's multiple things. I mean, you got cultural stuff, but one thing that, we might end up talking about at some point is, I think, people's cognitive styles is a big one.
Yeah.
Like, for
Mhm.
example, this podcast is very much intuitive, right brained, kind of always kind of trying to make connections between things. And so if you are hanging out with someone who's not speaking your language, even if they are a type that you like, it's just going to feel it's still, I mean, you can still have a great relationship with that person, but I think there's an initial hurdle there. And then, yeah, just I think there are other factors beyond Enneagram type that can determine whether or not you get along with someone. And I mean, for me, for some reason, like if I hear someone's voice, the way they talk can really be can
Mhm.
be a real like, oh, I don't want to hear you talk about anything, you know. So it's
Yeah. If you're like really into fucking crypto, I hate you. Like, if you're
I
one of
feel
those people
like,
that
yeah,
that
no,
makes
that makes
sense
perfect
to,
sense.
if that makes sense to you, like I hate you because it's just like everybody I've ever seen that's like really into that shit is just like just intolerable for me.
If you're a crypto bro, get
Yeah,
the fuck out.
just like the blockchain, bro. You know, I'm like fuck you.
yeah.
My
Men
thing
in
is,
general just rub me the wrong way. But anyway, go ahead.
oh, okay. So why are you on this podcast?
I still like attention.
Good one.
Yeah, mine is sexual instinct stuff. And I think it's partly my strange upbringing, or whatever you want to call what happened to me. Like when there's and plus
David's
being
survival story.
yeah, sexual middle and having a 7 fix. Like if there's not some sex stuff happening kind of in some way, you know, kind of leaking into everything, then it's like, what are we even doing here? Why are we what's happening? Or
Yeah, that's pretty
you know,
accurate.
yeah, it's just and that's why my reflex often with sexual blinds is to force it on them, you know.
Yep.
And and yeah, so and then, you know, if they can withstand that, then maybe there's a chance.
Then they're in.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just gotta, the key with David, you gotta, you know, whip him back into place if he gets out of line. Just
Yeah, but it's going to come back because the trickster does his thing.
Oh yeah, it's a give and take. Yeah. Ebb and
you know-
flow goes with the moon.
What I was thinking is the person who's asking this is probably not social blind, and
Right.
there
yeah.
there is kind of like a thing, at least from my perspective as a social blind, that you kind of automatically or innately just find your people that you chemically mix with. Like, it's just like, oh, we're made of the same chemicals. Like we can coexist and it'll all kind of create something interesting. And I guess it's like a shadow social thing where it's like, you know, coming into the Enneagram, looking around, it's like, oh yeah, those guys are kind of like, I feel like we are made up the same substance on some level. Like we fuck around and have humor, but we're really serious about the Enneagram. And it's not really a conscious thought. It's like, oh yeah, that's my type of person. I can talk to that person. We can create together and all kinds of stuff. And so I've kind of just viewed social that way my whole life. I just assume it's going to happen if you put me in the same room or in the same space with someone who has a similar sensibility, that we're just going to hit it off somehow. So
before we go, I just wanted to say that my soon-to-be sister-in-law said something really fucking funny today. That made me think of you guys. She said, "Oh, well, because I was talking about mixing my friend group at my wedding, and she said, "Oh, well, you know, if they're all friends with you, then they'll totally get along with each other." And I just thought that was a very attachment-y thing to say.
So we'll just sit there in a corner. We're at our own table.
Yeah, you will.
Yeah.
You mean they will get along with your other friends?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. By the
Joke's
way,
on
David,
you.
I've already talked you up to one of my friends who's into older guys, so you're welcome.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay, you got the sexual crackle going. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, to me, the only reason to go to a wedding is if there's the possibility of sex.
I know. That's why I
Yeah,
had to get someone
so-
for you. It's fine.
I mean, I would never go to your wedding just for you, Nancy.
No.
Just to honor the glorious, noble vows and all of that bullshit.
Nope.
You're not important enough, Nancy, for all
I
that.
know,
You've got
I
to bring
know.
the sex for him to be there.
Yeah, that's understandable. You know, there's plenty of it to go around.
Okay.
Oh yeah, we have to pick who won the prize.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, true.
What was our favorite? I think the German person.
Yeah.
That's my vote anyway.
Yeah.
That's
20 minutes. I mean,
Yeah,
we
lot
gotta
to
give
say.
it to her.
and
composed
she had
her
some
own
like actual
podcast.
critique too,
Right.
like strong
Yeah.
critique.
She's the only one allowed to have a critique. Yeah, find out German girl's email and I'll send her.
I can just forward that email to John. And
Oh, yeah, just for the email.
all right, cool.
Thanks for all your submissions, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, bye.
All right,
Bye.
later, y'all. Bye.
Later.
Bye.